Welcome to the Get Out In It podcast, keeping our mental and physical well-being balanced by heading out into nature and doing stuff.
The activity isn't important. Walk, run, hike, bike, whatever it is, just find something you enjoy and get out in it. The point of this podcast is to show how ordinary people can achieve extraordinary levels of health and fitness.
Out here, we'll share informal, inclusive advice for anyone trying to improve their mental and physical well-being, based on our own experiences and professional knowledge from our special guests.
So let's lace up and get out in it.
And here we are. Welcome to episode 13. What a week it has been. How are you, Maria Herring?
I'm very well, James Bell. Oh, it feels like I haven't done a pod with you for ages. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. I mean, it does feel like we have not been together doing a podcast for some time with all the travels you've been doing and various missioning about and, you know, the places that I've been as well. But we find ourselves in Sicily, don't we, at the moment, recording a podcast overlooking the Sicilian countryside. What a place to be.
I mean, it is like hot as Satan's bollocks. But it's pretty nice. I'm not going to lie. It's a nice change of scenery. I am digging it.
Absolutely am digging this. We're both a little fatigued because we attended an event yesterday. But here we are doing the podcast. We've got a pre-recorded interview coming up very soon. But the first thing I've got to ask you is, what have you done this week to get out in it?
Got out in it. Okay, so I've just come off the back of my fortnight of sports camps, and my getting out in it this week has mostly been trying to get from France to Sicily, which was something of a fucking mission, with all sorts of plane delays, plane diversions. So yeah, most of it has been trying to get from one country to another. I haven't done any training, getting out in it wise, but I have done some walking around Sicily yesterday, which was actually lovely. I'm looking forward to this week to doing a lot of running and exploring in Sicily, but mostly Mount Etna.
Yeah, so the travel to get here was quite the endeavour, wasn't it? There was a fire at the local airport, so all flights were being cancelled. They were getting diverted. 1 minute you thought you were flying into one airport, the next minute you thought you were flying into another. We got dropped the furthest you possibly could be from where we needed to be, and then we're offered a bus to the other side of the island, which was also as far as you could possibly get from where we needed to be. And through hook or crook, we did eventually get here, and it was quite the day. What should have been 6 hours worth of travelling from leaving from where we started to where we were getting to turned into more like a 24-hour mission, didn't it? So we were broken by the time we arrived. But we then jumped into the event of the day, and now we are trying to pull ourselves together and recover from a very busy couple of days. My getting out on it has, as always been, as it always seems to be at the moment, rehabbing my hip and trying to get us safely to Sicily. And I feel I did a fairly good job on that. We got here. But let's not ramble on too much about what we've been up to and jump into an interview with Jill and Eric.
Yeah, this is a great interview with a wonderful couple. I was deeply disappointed that I couldn't be with you on that hike and a chat, but I'm excited for everybody to have a good old listen to this.
Yeah, so let's get on with it. Let's get our hiking boots on and go and have a chat with Jill and Eric. Getting into it. So this week, I am lucky to be joined by Jill and Eric Wojta. Jill is a running and ultra-running phenomenon with a marathon PR of 2:52 and wins in the 2021 Hennepin Hundred with 16:04, first female and third overall, setting a course record, and the 2022 Tunnel Hill 100 with 14:59, first female and fourth overall. Eric has a background in swimming and this year rode the Driftless Gravel Race over 105 miles with 11,000 feet of elevation. Completed a 203-mile one-day self-supported ride across Wisconsin on trail and did the Hotdish 100-mile gravel ride. Along with their kids, they train together, race together, and adventure together. Guys, great to have you along. How's things?
Good. Thank you for having us. It's great to be here.
I got it all out without taking a breath, I think. How did I do on the intro?
You did great. You pronounced the name correctly, which is not often done. And so you did a great job.
You made us sound really spectacular.
And
so thank you.
And she is a phenomenon. So I think that's accurate. So thank you.
Getting that word out without destroying it was the achievement of my lifetime. So obviously the first question we've got to ask you is, what have you done this week to get out in it, the two of you?
This morning I went for a bike ride around 5:30 and then got back here, came back. Jill, you?
I went out for a run, and although I did a speed work, I took our Australian Shepherd with us so that she could get in a workout so that she would be better behaved. But then I had to rush off for an appointment, so I brought home a very muddy, dirty dog that I left in the kennel for Eric to deal with.
So I lifted a little bit of weights afterwards and came back here and saw a completely muddy dog in the kennel. So I just before the podcast,
just a note in the kitchen saying clean dog in kennel.
Yeah, no. She said, I'll deal with it later. And I said, well, we won't have a muddy dog sitting in the house waiting to be cleaned later. So we took care of it.
And how long was your run with your dog this morning?
10.5 miles.
Oh, that's not bad. Not bad. She did well to keep up, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's a great runner, the dog is. And you're bringing your mileage down for a race that's upcoming?
Yep.
Yeah. So.
And which race is that?
I am doing the Voyager 50 mile. It's the second time I've done it. It's pretty much the first ultra that I've ever done. So I'm going back to where it all began.
Oh, nice. And how many times have you done it? So this is the second time you've done it. What was your result the first time you did it?
First time I did it in 8 hours and 41 minutes, I believe, and got second place female. So if I'm going to be honest, I'm hoping to better that time.
Yeah.
First over 26 miles, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So doubling the marathon for the first time was the first time you ran it. Yeah.
And came second. Nice. So yeah, I mean, I want to start with you, Jill, really, because you've had some amazing results over the ultra distance. Recently, you've told me that you've won 2 100-mile races, first female, third overall, fourth overall. How did you find ultra running, and how did you discover that you had an aptitude for it?
Well, thank you very much for saying that. I guess I would say I found ultra running. I've always been a runner. Started back in elementary school when we had like these track and field days. And looking back, probably I was successful at these because I was one of maybe 1 or 2 people that would sign up for the 400 or the 800 or the mile. But I got to beat the boys. So that spurred on something that made me think, oh, maybe I'm good at this. So ran all throughout high school, dabbled in college, and then did some marathons during college. And ultimately, I didn't really realize trail running existed until Eric went and did this 100-mile bike race in the winter time where it was, how cold was it, Eric?
Minus 17 degrees Fahrenheit. So,
Celsius.
Yeah, that was
very cold. Cold enough.
It was not. Yeah, it was very cold. Yeah, I actually ended up getting a bit of frostbite in the toes from that. That was better decisions could have been made. Let's just put it that way.
New family rules. When it's that cold,
we don't stay out for more than an hour or 2 hours. Yeah, that type of thing.
There's no such thing as too cold. You were just wearing the wrong shoes, my man.
I did not have my boots were rated to 5 below, not 17 below. And that was, you are correct. It's just getting the appropriate gear.
But during that race, there was also people out there that were running this 100-mile event. And they had to carry sleds and sticks of butter, and you could do a 60-mile event or a 100-mile event. And I was very intrigued by this and thought, well, I want to do that. But my more sensible husband here said, maybe we should start with like a more moderate temperature. Maybe you could do this just like in normal conditions and you don't have to carry a sled. So I listened.
Yeah. Yes. and I think, so your journey, she has been a runner her entire life and has been injury free most, other than the nicks and bumps and that people have, but primarily injury free. And I attribute that to, she never stops running. She's smart about taking off days during the week, but there's never long periods of time that she hasn't run, 3 months that she takes off or anything like that. And so she's been very durable and fit, and then also obviously very, very fast. So, but she's stuck with it for years and years, and I think that's helped her durability as well.
It is it is infuriating when you have a partner who runs with you and is injury free constantly.
Well,
because I'm a mess. I'm falling apart, and Maria just bounces from ultra to ultra and never seems to stumble.
Well, you get used to that. Let's just put it that way. And I think I like to think of myself as a fairly good athlete, and I certainly understand that I run with her on her easy days and her easy days. And for me, those are not easy. 12-mile runs through the bluff and the mountains is not an easy day for me. That's stretching my limits, and it's her easy day, but it works out quite well.
But then we have a whole different story when we're on bikes. I'm very good at tucking behind him. And I also know that he's slowing down a lot for me to be able to go with him.
So you went, and after you decided not to do the cold sled race, you went and did the 50-mile. That was your first ultra, and the second place in that. What did that feel like? What did that feel like when you'd had that result in your first ever attempt at an ultra marathon?
Ultras, they teach you a lot, right? And they can be very humbling. But I will say, I loved it. I had so much fun, and I'm very excited to go back, because even though I didn't win, and even though I went out too fast and really brought hurt on myself, I knew it was something that I wanted to do again. And it, we hear the word curious a lot in training for ultras and racing ultras, and it definitely left me feeling curious of what else is out there. What else can I do? How can I do better?
And I think that's the thing too, with any of these endurance races, you're proud of yourself, but then you see 4 or 5 different things that you think, that wasn't optimal, and you could fix it. And I know for sure in your run, the first time she did that, the goal was to get out under control, and she did for the first 15 miles, and then started talking to someone and just hammered a 2:23 marathoner, I think, and just hammered for the next 15 miles and went incredibly fast. And then so you're halfway done, and then she struggled to finish a little bit, and then you go, maybe if I took it out a little bit more cautiously, we could have done.
Every day's a school day, isn't it? And certainly when I think the first time you go over that marathon distance, it's like going to university rather than a school day. You get such a schooling in your own mind, in your own physicality, because you go past the point of bonking, and you just have to learn how to carry on.
Yes, so many lessons were learned.
And I will say, her strength now as a runner is what she learned. She's only done 2 100-mile races, those 2 that you mentioned. And first one she did, she set a course record in, the second one, and won both. But her strength, and what other runners who have said to her, is that she paces herself more than anyone else. She gets out an even pace at first and comes on very strong at the end. And in fact, when you broke 15 hours, I think she dropped her pacer for the last 3 miles. He's only running, and he's a great runner. He's a great ultra runner. In the last 3 miles of her 100 miles, she dropped him because she knew she could get under 15 hours, but also because I think she had managed the entire race so well. Which I think is really a challenge to do.
But if my pacer listens to this, I need everybody to know it was freezing cold. It's way different to be the pacer when you're not invested in the race. He stood around all day in the snow and cold, waited to run with me. And a pacer has nothing invested in the race, right? Other than helping you. So I'll give him a little bit of.
We got to shout out to Aaron if he listens. He's an incredible pacer. He is, and he's a great runner. So that it's throwing no shade on him whatsoever. And I think he will say that as well. He was proud of you for doing what you did.
Yes, he's a good friend.
There you go. I've actually got a question from Maria, because she sent me a few questions that she wanted to find out, because I'm currently injured, so I'm not racing this year. I'm fighting a bit of a hip injury, and it's a bit of a struggle. But we generally race ultras together, the two of us, and she's never done one without me there. So she's currently preparing for our October 80-kilometer race on her own. And she wanted to ask, how can she prepare her mind to do a solo ultra, having never done one alone? And she also added, is it cheating if she spends the last half of the race on the phone to me to talk her through it?
I don't think so, but we have a story about that, about you doing an ultra on your own.
Oh,
Javelina. No,
okay.
sorry, Bandera.
So I don't want to scare her about doing it on her own. I mean, will you be there to cheer her and support her?
Of course. Yeah, of course. I'll be there.
So then
she's golden.
Then she'll be fine as long as you're there. But I have found that I really appreciate having Eric there. And there's a part of me that wanted to think, I don't need him. I can go run these. But then I realized a couple things, and that is having him there makes it more fun. Having somebody that's there for you throughout the course that you get to see, and who's telling you good job, and who's there to celebrate at the finish line, no matter how you do, it changes it for me. And then also, I've told Eric this, like, we do these things and then you're proud of them, and then they quickly, the next day's a new day. But I still want to make him proud. I want Eric to be proud of me, like whatever. And I know he will be, whether I do well or don't do well. But I think both of us feel this way. I want Eric to think I'm tough. I want Eric to think I'm badass. I want Eric to think that's my wife. And she's pretty amazing and awesome. And so I love having him there.
And I clearly do think she's tough and badass. And yes, she can do all this stuff on her own. She certainly can, but it's more fun to experience it together, I think. And I do think, so my master's degree is in exercise physiology. Her undergraduate degree is in exercise physiology. She's her own coach, but we talk about training together and planning and race planning and what we want to do. So it's helpful to have the team together. And Aaron is part of our team as a pacer. He's a super pacer of what we found. So that the three of us, the wolf pack, it's helpful to be together.
But for Maria, I will say I signed up to do Bandera 100K last year, and I flew down before Eric, and then he was supposed to join me, but Eric got COVID. So he did not get to join me down there. And this was going to be a big race where I was going to be facing professional runners. It's a Western States qualifier.
Yeah.
I felt I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I didn't have Eric there to help me minimize some of that pressure. Like, it wasn't as much fun, and it made me focus on the things that can make it less fun and make it more stressful. And honestly, I didn't have a very good race for multiple reasons, and I don't say this to make Eric feel guilty, because it's on me and many variables, but it just made me.
I think we'll blame Eric.
Yes. I take full responsibility. It was also, and she had a great race. So then this Bandera qualifier became just another race. We kind of, let's try this. Let's get into this one, and had someone who sponsored her a little bit for it. And so it was an addition to the training schedule.
I had ran my first 100K and my first 100 mile. And then I put this on top of it, and it just, I think my body wasn't quite ready for that. My body needed a little bit of a break, but I went for it anyways because I got caught up in the excitement.
She flew down Monday or Tuesday. I teach, so I was not able to get multiple days off, so I was going to fly down Thursday. The day after she flew out, I was not feeling great, got tested, had COVID. So her crew's not there. She's in it was a tough scenario to try and be focused and positive. And ultimately, you didn't have your best race, But I think you showed out well. You still did well. Do you remember what you were overall on that? Women?
Maybe 14th female.
14th female or something like that. Not your best.
Not bad
Not
for a bad day.
Yeah, exactly. And many people would take that as their best day. And it's not about place. But it wasn't a great experience because we weren't there to share it together, I think. And yeah,
We weren't there to laugh.
It was a tough scenario.
No,
To
yeah.
laugh at things together.
And I was home she was saying, should I fly home right away? Because our kids were healthy and good. And so our kids learned to make meals on their own and all that kind of stuff. So it was a learning experience.
Yeah, when you do things as a team, sometimes, you don't have that immediate talk down of something you know logically, but you need someone to tell you, just say, of course you don't need to worry about that because this is what we always do type thing.
So ultimately, I think that Maria is going to be fine because you're going to be there and she's still going to see you. And she just has to get from aid station to aid station so that she gets to have your pep when she gets there. And she can just treat it like a different kind of adventure. Because I think that's part of the mind game, right? That you play with yourself as you're on this type of adventure and how are you going to face this one? And
she knows it going into it. And then that's the challenge, but then that you'll be there as well. So I think it'll work. Yeah.
So follow on from that question. She also said that when we're racing together, we tend to balance out each other's highs and lows. It's very rare that both of us are having a low at the same time or both of us are feeling amazing at the same time. There's always somebody to pick the other one up. She wants to know, what do you do when you hit those lows, when you're on your own, to get yourself out of those dark moments?
For me, so many different mind games that I have come across. I guess the biggest thing that I do is I remind myself, we have to remind ourselves that we chose to do this, right? We not only did we choose to do it, but we get to do it. We get to be out there doing these things. So that's one of the things I do. Another, simple things like I can pick the next thing, get to this thing, get to the aid station, get to that tree, get to this thing, get to your pacer, so those types of things. And then I do, I ask myself, because it comes back to that toughness, am I being tough right now? Am I giving in when I shouldn't be giving in? So then can I be tougher? But then sometimes you have to be nice to yourself too. And you have to just say, I'm doing fine. I'm doing well. I can do this. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. I know I'm going to feel better. I might feel worse, but then I'll start to feel better. And all those different techniques you can play with yourself.
And looking for you from the outside in, as we've been married around 15 years and together longer, obviously, what she's done a very good job of, she's a very motivated, driven person who's great to be around other people, but she's not, she critiques herself like all of us do, more harshly than anyone else, and is harder on herself than anyone else. And I think what she's done a really nice job of in the last couple of years is knowing it's okay that I'm going to go through a tough spot. In fact, that's expected, and that you don't judge yourself. You just figure out, I know that the difficulty is coming, and so I will be able to figure out how to get through it. And I think that's a big thing, because there is no perfect race. I coach swimming and coaching for 25 years. There is no perfect race.
No.
But there are great races because you've worked through difficulty. And so not to be surprised by the adversity, but to be ready to work through it and give yourself grace to wallow in it a little bit and say, all right, how do I find my way back into this race? Because I've done it before, that type of thing.
Something that Chrissy said a couple of weeks ago stuck with me, and that was if you're feeling really, really high, don't trust it. If you're feeling really, really low, don't believe it. Those feelings don't last forever, and don't just buy into whatever sensation you're having in that moment.
Yes, 100%. And when I swam in college, I warmed up, and the better swimmer I became, the more I realized, don't trust how you feel. How you feel is kind of irrelevant to what you're going to do today. you know. Don't get too excited. Don't get too depressed. If you feel great, you could have a good day. If you feel terrible, you could still have a great day. Just work the process. Yep.
It goes back to whether you're motivated to train or not. Motivation is almost irrelevant. Just do the work. You know, motivation there feels good.
Yeah.
You know, brilliant. You might bounce out of bed feeling like you want to do it, but if it's not there, you still got to do it, and you've got to learn to do that.
Yes, and if you can figure out a way to enjoy it along the way. Like I think she went through. We've done some family vacations. She had a race, and it's hard to get some training in. And she's gone through recently kind of a little tougher training block, I would say. And she went out with our dog, and our 9-year-old son went for a ride in the mountain, in the bluff. With our bluffs are mini mountains here in this area. And she went for a ride with the dog, a run with her dog and our son. And she came back smiling and doing the work and enjoying it. Is, if you can figure out a way to enjoy it while you're doing it, so beneficial.
Absolutely. It is indeed. So for both of you, really, when you're doing, whether you're either out on a long adventure bike ride or you're out doing a 100-mile run, how do you get your head in the right place before that gun goes off to have the long day you're about to have?
It's interesting that you say that, because just this past weekend, I did that 100-mile bike ride, 100-mile gravel ride, and I didn't give it the respect that it deserved. I was just going to do it as a training ride, had done some workouts before. And as the gun went off, I didn't have a plan. And as far as going with the group, and I was just going to do it as a training ride. And and even still, even when you do a training ride, I realized I should have had more of a focus going in. Yes, this is a training ride. I'm putting the miles in, I'm putting the vert in. That's a good thing. But I still need to have my mind prepared for the challenge ahead. And it took me 30 miles, 1/3 of the race to get into it. And then I was able to get into it. But I realized, I hadn't done the preparation for this. And not resting. I'm not talking about the physical preparation. I'm talking about just mentally going into it in kind of an attack mode, I would say.
It's that giving the distance and the race the respect it deserves kind of thing in your brain, preparing for that.
Correct. 100%. And I think I think that translates also to a difficult training day, giving that training day the respect it deserves, the rest the night before, the focus of, okay, I'm going to get after it. And I realized, usually I do that. I didn't do that this past weekend, and then you get yourself into it. And once again, it's another learning activity. Now for Jill, I think for your running, maybe I'll let you speak, but from my perspective for your running, you don't race a lot. So when you do race, it's a meaningful experience. I know some people.
What is your pre-race process, Jill?
Mentally, so for me mentally, I guess I try to think about, like, what's the purpose of this race? Like, what do I want to get out of this? I coach a lot of athletes too. And so that's just something that I think we need to think about before we go, because this is a long time to be out there. You could, depending upon what you're doing, 50 miles, 100K, 100 miles, that's a long time. So you're going to have moments where you're bored, moments where you are excited, moments where you're tired, moments where you want to quit. So there are times. Another big thing that they talk about in the ultra world is, what's your why? So I do try to have like an overarching purpose of, like, what is my why? Why am I out here doing this? How am I going to get myself from aid station to aid station or to the finish line? And I've set my biggest thing is to, like, this sort of sounds cheesy, but it's the truth. And that is to, like, let my light shine. I do this because I love it. I do this because it makes me feel alive. I am very fortunate that I have a husband who supports me and a lifestyle that affords me to be able to do these things. So I try to do that. Does that mean I'm not sometimes, crabby or grumpy? Yes, I am. And it's hard. And then I will
Social
say
media can often convince us that we're not allowed to be crabby or grumpy, and we've just got to get out.
Yes, isn't that the truth?
In reality, you can understand all the things you just said, but still wake up in a bad mood, and it's fine.
Right. I guess I have two thoughts when you brought up the social media thing. It was also, I think we can easily undervalue ourselves because we think you hear other people about their mega workouts that they're doing or how they faced this challenge or this race. And you think, oh, did I do that? Did I step up to the challenge? But then when you remove yourself from the comparison and you just look at like what you're doing, you realize I did. I faced that workout, even though my legs were tired. I kept going. I pushed the pace. Whatever it is. So just learning to just like appreciate your own journey versus being so caught up in what other people are doing.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important.
And then I just ran a race, the Kettle 100K here in Wisconsin, and I wanted to get the course record, and I didn't. I'm very proud of the race. I am proud of my time. I am proud of what I did, except for I will say that when I realized that I wasn't going to get the course record, I had to do a whole different like reframing of my mental game because I realized like, where's my joy? It's gone because I'm mad because I'm not going to get this course record. And I still have 15 miles to go and this is hard and this sucks. And I kind of want to quit because I was very focused on getting that course record.
Focused on the result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I knew I was still going to get to finish line because I'll be honest, A goal was the course record. B goal, course record. C goal was to finish.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out, well, how am I going to get to the finish now? And how am I going to be okay with this race? So, like I said, I'm still very proud of this race because we need to be very careful with I think I need to be very careful with, a lot of people would be very, I don't want to say envious of me, but they would be envious of getting to win a race, right? Like I'm very fortunate that I got to have that experience. But the bigger lesson is for me, when you're so focused on a time goal, you can get in your own way. And so I sometimes like maybe I could have turned it around and still in this race, I don't think I could have still got the course record, but could I have done better than what I did if I wouldn't have gotten so out of my own head or gotten in my own way? And I think it's made me realize like I can't have those kind of goals. I have to have a different kind of goal. And that's like a bigger thing of like for my next race, my goal is I'm going to start smart. And then when it's time to turn around and go get to the finish, I'm going to ask myself, am I being tough? Can I be tougher right now? Am I giving my best right now?
I love that.
Because then you can maybe achieve more.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're setting yourself time-related goals to a course that doesn't change, there's a lot of metrics that can be part of that you don't even notice, course conditions, the way you feel, have you slept well enough? I mean, there's a huge amount that can affect it when you tie it to a time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm embarrassed to say that I had that as like my goal, but also I think we do these things because we're on this journey together to share what we learn and what we gain.
So next year, you're going to go back and take that course record, yeah?
I told Eric I'm done with that one.
Well, I'll say this. There's not a lot of people in that have gone under 15 hours for a 100-mile race, right? And so she's an elite company, but her best races have been when she's focusing on on herself and her process and her joy as opposed to the end result. And I think that's a lesson we all struggle with that if we're being the last person in or the first person in, is that you focus on your process. And that's where the joy happens. That's where you can be proud of yourself. Our son, 12-year-old son, like we make if they don't come to the race, they'll maybe make a card for her or me or that type of thing. And he said, what did he say? Mom, and she won. But he said, Mom, I wouldn't care if you got first or 100th. I'm proud of what you're doing. And that's it. I mean, that's it. I mean, really.
That is it. And like you say, as soon as you take that goal away from the overall experience and put it on something, if that something disappears, then you feel like you failed, no matter what else you achieve in that day or that week.
And that is so foolish, right? Because anytime you cross the finish line for a 50-mile race, a 100-mile race, that should not even be on the table.
Yeah, it's amazing what you've done.
That was a 66-mile race, so 100K.
100K, so that's 62 miles.
62, yeah. What was the course record on that one?
9:45.
Okay, that's next year then, eh? We'll all come over. We'll all come over. We'll come and cheer you on.
There you go.
Deal.
Big crew. It was a hot day. Yeah.
Maria also wanted to ask you about your training blocks because you coach yourself. How, before you're doing a 100-mile race or a 100K race, what's the final training block like for that? Do you periodize your training? How do you approach training for a race like that?
I definitely. Okay, how do I want to say this? I do like to do like a training. I call it like a training camp where I do a big weekend where I prepare for the 100-mile race. But I don't ever like to get too far from doing some speed work and some intensity and keeping that in my legs also. So like when I look at my year, I sometimes break up the year and do, sometimes I like to do even this, like a mile, a training block where I'm training for like a mile, which is super painful, but it's kind of just, it's fun. And it's so different from what I do. So then I also like to sometimes break it up and do like a 10K training plan or a half marathon. I like to then dabble in the 50K. So I still keep all the different systems in my repertoire.
I think she does a systematic approach to training and works all energy systems. And I think in comparison to some ultra runners, I think there are times that she has much more intensity and there's times that she has more mileage. But I think that's because she's working all the systems as she works through it. And she loves doing higher intensity interval work. And we've talked about that. And she said, I don't want to, she's gone up distance, she didn't want to lose that component to it. And because that's what also brings her joy and motivation to get out and run. She likes going fast. And so she's kept that in there. But I will say your training block, what's that? I
said leg speed's important. It's important. You've got to
keep
it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then you're below threshold when you're just chilling. Yeah. And your training block, the training camp you do, the 3-day thing, mm-hmm. I think that's pretty unique. I think you'd be interested in hearing that with
Well, I'm not sure that it's incredibly unique because I've gotten Jason Koop is so I read a lot about the other coaches. I do coach myself, but I like to read what other coaches that are in the ultra running space do. Mm-hmm. And he's a big fan of the multiple day training camp, or like Western States has people come out and do a training camp where for 3 days they'll run like 20 miles. For me, I've set it up where I've done like 30 miles one day, 20 miles the next day, and 20 miles the next day. And then sometimes I try to increase the speed over those 3 days but this is when I'm training for these, like Tunnel Hill and Hennepin have been flatter, faster courses. So I also do some specificity where I get on the course that's going to be like that. So you can work on trying to be faster over the course of the 3 days.
But I think one of the things, like we said, is her pacing. So the 3-day, if it was 30 miles the first day, nothing faster than 9 minutes, 8:45, something like that. And then the second day, if it's a 20 mile, then the first 10 could be 9:45, and the second 10, she can go faster then. And then the third day, if she wants to be faster than 9:30s or, even 8 minutes, she can. But the idea there for her she would get so excited and the joy would come out. The first part of the race would go pretty fast, and then you're just hanging on for dear life. So programming your body to go out conservative and then let the speed come out later, which I think when I've seen you do that in the Hennepin, it shined through at the end. My perspective from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So how much support do you, I mean, we've talked about Eric and how, having him at the races underpins that performance a bit for you, makes it more fun. How much support do you get from your family, and how does that support manifest itself?
Well, Eric's my number one hype man. And then I, my parents and my sisters, they often come to my races, and the boys come to our races.
Your kids come along as well, do they?
Sometimes, like, they did a lot, but then I also understand this is like a very long day for them. And so sometimes I'm like, I understand if there's something more fun that you could be doing. I always want them there at the finish line, but I understand, like, if Eric's going to be crewing me, that's asking a lot of him to keep track of our kids and be there for me. So
they've been at half, probably over half, but the kind of the bigger runs or the bigger runs, they've cheered from afar, and during the aid station, maybe have had a Zoom or had the Apple watch, or so that they could cheer on as she's changing shoes once or twice, that type of thing.
Amazing.
And that was always a little pick me up when we did that.
I would say too, like, I feel really fortunate to come from this community that I come from. I'm not a sponsored athlete, and I'm not all over social media for multiple reasons. Time. I have a lot of things that I'm trying to balance in this life. And so I don't have a lot of time to invest in social media. But when I go and I do my races, I'm a labor and delivery nurse. And whenever I come back to work, when I first started working there, I don't feel like a lot of people knew I did this. And now people they're so supportive of me. And like when I won Tunnel Hill, I came back to work and they had a sign in the break room of 100 reasons why we love Jill. They didn't come up with 100 reasons really, so I'm a little disappointed, but
I'd still be pestering them for the rest of those reasons, to be honest.
So they had donuts and signs for me, and they care so much, and they ask me all about this craziness that we do, and it's it's been really fun, because as a labor and delivery nurse, I feel like my job and what we do there is so much like running an ultra race. Like, you work together as a team, and like a laboring mom and having a baby is like running an ultra. So in so many ways, I feel like I get to practice my mental game at work, as we, that's a whole cliche thing of having a baby is like running a marathon. And in some ways it is, because you have to pace yourself accordingly. You're so excited to have the baby, but if you can't carry that excitement if your labor is going to take 3 days, right? So you have to balance that, and you need your team and the different roles that people can play, and the support people that will show up for you and cheer for you and bring in different perspectives. So I feel like I have a whole lot of support from my family and my community around here.
Amazing. And Eric, sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Well, I was just saying that one other part is that I was thinking about this morning too, is so often I think moms feel guilty about doing this lifestyle. And I would just say, like, Eric and I have prioritized this as our lifestyle. Like, and I, as much as Eric says, like, I'm really hard on myself, which I can be, but I've also realized, like, it's okay to also be confident in yourself. And I'm confident that we're good parents. Do we fall short a lot? I don't doubt that the boys know that we love them, and that we want what's best for them. And we're showing them a pretty cool lifestyle too, that you can have a job, you can be an adult, your own dreams and your own goals. And so leading into Eric is that he very much supports me in all of this. And sometimes I noticed, like, Eric's a really good athlete. Eric was an All-American swimmer in college. Eric is a huge part in doing what I do, because he's like my assistant coach, my therapist. He's not my cook. He definitely falls short there. I have to be my own nutritionist. But I noticed like he was putting all of his, he'd be willing to put his own rides and his own training on the back burner to support me. And so this past year, I was like, I don't want this to be only about me, because you love it too. Like Eric and I met through coaching track, but that's a whole nother story. And I just remember saying to Eric, like, hey, like, if you want to do this stuff too, we can make sure that we both can prioritize this in our life. And we can make sure that we're making time for you. And you can sign up for races too. And I can support you like you support me. So now you can ask Eric the question you had for him.
I was going to say, Eric, you're taking all my questions out my mouth. I love it. Eric, you found swimming through rehab when you were younger, and you became a bit of a badass swimmer. Do you still swim, or is it now mainly longer bike rides, more endurance stuff, or do you still find yourself in the pool sometimes?
Well, that's a good question. So I started swimming as rehab after a football injury, breaking C4 and C6. Was paralyzed for a day and then was in a back brace for a year. Oof. And so swimming was rehab. So I did that. Started swimming on the swim team my junior year in high school as a 15, 16-year-old. And I was a sprinter, so not a great endurance swimmer in college, but I was pretty athletic and pretty strong and pretty fit. And now I find I really enjoy the endurance aspect of everything we do. I don't swim that much anymore, primarily because getting outside on a bike in our community is amazing. We have bluffs, we have we have amazing places. So running and biking, you can do at any time, and you don't have to worry about the pool schedule.
And you don't have to get wet, and you don't have to get dry again. Look, man, I hear you. I swam a lot when I was younger, and I can't be fucked anymore.
Yeah, right.
Running and biking is the way.
Yeah, you can step out your door and work out. And not have to drive to a pool 14 miles away somewhere, that type of thing. So I'm all in. I love getting outside and doing the stuff we do. So
and where are your priorities?
I'll hop in and swim once in a while, though.
Where are your priorities? Are you trying to find like the peak of an athletic performance in something at the moment, or do your priorities lie in finding the joy through help, like being, like Jill says, assistant coach, support crew, doing your own thing at times, but, being there to support her journey?
Go ahead.
I'm just going to tell you one thing. He really prides himself when his watch tells him that he's got the fitness of a 20-year-old.
That's all Maria cares about. All Maria cares about is how old a watch tells her is and how good a sleep tells her she's had.
So I'm 52, right? I'm 52 years old, and Jill gave me her old Garmin watch. And that's the first time I've ever activity tracked or anything. And it was this past year. And as I'm working out, and I lift in the mornings before school with an athlete. He was an All-American track hurdler, all national Division III national champion sprinter, and was working out. And then my watch told me, you have the VO2 max aerobic capacity of an extremely fit 20-year-old. I took a picture of that, right? I took a screenshot of it. It was on the Garmin app. I screenshot that, and occasionally I send that to Jill just a reminder that her husband has or at one point in time had the aerobic ability of a extremely fit 20-year-old. Yes.
So that's what he's chasing, James.
No, that's what you're chasing. There are your priorities. Trying to get down to a 19-year-old.
It's a great question, because I out of college I dabbled in triathlons and just like pushing myself, and I'd swim with this group of triathletes, Kona athletes that qualified for Kona and were doing great in their age group, and one of the athletes, every time she'd come in, she'd talk about how sore she is and how she's not meeting her intervals and that type of thing. And she was kicking ass, but she was complaining about it the whole time.
Not having
And
fun.
yeah, and then and here I am coming right out of college, I was swimming better than anyone out there. And I was thinking, well, I'm never going to reach the intervals that I had when I was in college. I think that goal physically, if I committed all resources to it, could I go faster than I did in college? Probably, but that's past. And so why am I here? I'm here because any day moving is better than a day not moving.
And if you committed all your resources to chasing that, would you be having joy in the rest of your life? Or would you just be spending all your time chasing something that is very hard to achieve?
Correct. And there's no shame in saying, I'm very proud of what I've done in the past, and I don't have to compete with my past self in order for me to feel value in working out. You know, I like difficult things. I like pushing against difficulty. And so these, like the endurance we rode earlier this year, I rode across Wisconsin and on gravel, and that 203-mile ride. And it kind of coincides with our family dynamic as well. So what did we do? We had a day that would work. It looked like there was maybe going to be thunderstorms, but we're going to try and do it anyway. And so I was going to ride across the state. Jill will pack up the kids in the truck and meet me there. And then we'll stay overnight, find a hotel for the boys to play in that has a pool. And then they'll play in the pool. We'll go to a children's museum. And we went to the Sprecher Museum that they make beer and soda and that type of stuff, free taste testing. And we made a day of it down there once we got there. So it was a family activity, and I could push myself and see if I could ride across the state. My goal is to ride across the state in the winter. And I tried that last winter, and made it 144 miles through the snow. But then you have to connect on roads, and that became problematic. And so we had to bail out of it. So that was kind of recon mission for my winter goal there.
Amazing.
So the goal is to kind of push yourself and see what you can do, no matter what age I am and no matter what pace it becomes. Yeah.
Exactly that. And so when you saw Jill taking off like she did, running these hundreds and winning things, did you have a feeling she was going to take to it like that? Or was it a surprise to you? Like, Jesus Christ. All right, fair enough. Slow down.
Well, I was not surprised. I will tell you that 100%, because we trained together. Now I don't train on her hard days, but when we were dating, we would run together. And when I'd go for runs, there's not a lot of people that could drop me at all. But when we went for runs, she could drop me like a bad habit. And so, this is different, you know, and that's completely cool. When we went for a run, we'd go for a 15-mile run. When we had a baby in the stroller, she'd push the stroller. And I have no problem with that. I mean, so I'm not surprised. The first time she ran a marathon, she qualified for Boston. And then, you know, so she has that talent. And she has worked she came in very strong, but has worked step by step to get even better. And it's a process that has been fun to be part of, but I'm not surprised at all in what she's done. I'm impressed. I'm continued to be impressed, but I'm not surprised.
Have you ever competed together? In anything, be it cycle or running or?
Well, we did that sprint triathlon together.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And we've done an adventure race together.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we did an adventure race.
Who won the sprint triathlon?
Eric.
It was a sprint triathlon. So yeah, and we were in different waves. So
it might have been a whole different story if we were head to head.
She's pretty competitive.
Yeah.
But I was in the first wave and then never saw a person. As a swimmer in the first wave, you just never see another person on the entire triathlon. So, but she was in a wave, I don't know, 20 minutes behind me or something like that.
He would have crushed me no matter what.
But no, it is. I will say this: we're both very competitive, and that's something relationship-wise, probably not for your podcast, but something that we had to that being competitive is very helpful in athletics and very helpful in your life, and sometimes not the most helpful thing in relationships. Someone has to like be the voice of reason and try and just not. And yeah.
So who is that in this relationship? Who's the voice of reason?
Here we go. Everybody calm down.
I have learned to become the voice of reason sometimes. Not perfect in that respect. I'll say that.
Well, just because this is an audio medium, I will tell our listeners that Jill is pulling a very strange face right now.
I'll let him win. See that? I'll let him win that discussion.
So you're both super active. You've got young kids. How do you go about balancing family time, training time, and combining family time and training time?
We communicate with each other. Like, I'm going to get up at this time. You can get up at this time, so we can balance that. Like, so definitely working together on that, teamwork. The boys have their own adventures. They're in mountain biking or football and track and field. And so
cross country skiing this winter too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So supporting them and their things and creating family adventures, getting out and doing it together. It might mean like the bike ride is not a workout for me or Eric, but getting to see your kids fall in love with it is better than winning a race, right? Like being out there together. Like Grady loves wakeboarding, so we get outside and in Eric's boat and watching Grady take on learning how to jump the wake and seeing that smile on his face. Like, I just sit in the boat and I'm like, this is why people have kids. Like, there's nothing better than this. And then the other day when I got to go for a bike ride with Zeke, we went up this like big hill in the area, right? He wanted to do this. He's
it's around an 18% grade at the top of the hill. So it's probably, it's a steep hill.
So he just says, Mom, I've been looking for a challenge I'll come with. So your heart just bursts inside you because you're like, I've been waiting for this day. You're going to come along and do not just a little 3 mile around the block ride, but you're going to come to bike on the trails that I run. And so that was a really, really happy day.
And I'll chime in. There's two things. I think, number one, early mornings. And number two, the word you said is balance. And so I think Jill will have a 12-hour shift as a nurse. And so she'll get up at 4:30 and run before her 12-hour shift and get a 5-8 mile run and something like that. And if you're doing it early morning, you're not missing any family time. And similar to me, I've found a group that rides at 5:20 in the morning. And so we can get a nice quick ride in. Our boys, we made a priority that they wouldn't have to wake up to an empty house. So we'll take turns doing that or budget that so that they're supported and loved in that respect. It's finding that balance.
It's helpful too that they are a little bit older now, so we can sometimes go out together and they're okay at home for shorter periods of time by themselves. And my job allows me to train while the boys are in school. So that's really helpful. And I was just telling Eric this morning, like, my volume probably isn't necessarily where I want it right now, but I wouldn't sacrifice going to the lake or being out on the boat or riding on the trails as a family for 10 extra miles in my training week.
Doesn't sound like you need to be honest. Sounds like you're doing all right just where you are.
Right.
Thank you. But I do think like there is part of it too where life is training, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes, even though I didn't get the 10 extra miles in that I wanted to, making peace with that instead of letting myself think, well, that's going to affect my race, because maybe it's going to affect my race in a positive way instead of a negative way.
Exactly. This was, I'll follow that with another question from Maria, because she wanted to talk to you about mindset, and she's building up this 80K race in October at the moment, but she's had to go away for 2 weeks to do these sports camps for children. where she doesn't get any of her proper training in at all. She's on her feet all day, every day with young kids, tree climbing, zip lining,
Cool.
stand-up paddleboarding, stuff like that, you know. But she's not doing her training, and she's struggling to cope with the idea that she's losing 2 weeks of training. And then in the middle of that, she's also got sick. So she's had a bit of a virus that's kept her in bed for a day or so. She wanted to ask you, when life steps in and you find yourself not being able to do your normal routine, how do you cope with that?
Well, first I throw probably a little tantrum and a little fit, and I whine and complain and get all emotional about it to Eric. And then he helps me stabilize. And then I also come to grips with it myself, and just, that's life. That's how this works. Like, sickness is going to happen. But then also getting to work at these camps, she's getting to see some really cool things and do some really cool things. And she's still putting in time on her feet. She still has how much training load underneath her that she's already put in. These ultras, yes, you have to be fit for them, but there's such a mental game and so you can rely on what you've done, and you just have to be ready to, to trust yourself, to trust and to believe in yourself, and know that you can do more than you realize, and you can tell yourself you get to write the story. If you focus on what you didn't do and what you didn't get done, then it probably will affect your race negatively. But if you can spin the story and look at but I still did get this done, and it wasn't perfect, and nothing ever is, but there's still a lot of valuable things that I did to get to the starting line, and I trust and believe that I can get to the finish line. And sometimes you have to change your expectations. Like, maybe she wouldn't be able to be as fast as she wanted to be because this happened and this happened. I'm not saying you can still set the course record if you didn't have way less than ideal training, but sometimes you can still set the course record even when training isn't perfectly ideal.
And I'll also say this. I think we had talked about, life happens, and so there are some real things that happen, but when you train, do you have joy in your training? Because we had talked about the example of Jill getting out with her son and the dog, and all of a sudden she comes back with a smile on her face. And that training session, although intervals might not have been there, you didn't do an interval workout or a hit paces, there's great joy in the miles that you did. I coached swimming, and an athlete who ended up being a Division I swimmer throughout the year had been crushing it, but I didn't realize that she was struggling mentally every time she came to practice. She said some practices, and we found this out at the end of the year after she didn't perform great. She goes, some practices I'd cry through because I was just struggling so much mentally. Well, I should have known that as a coach. I failed as a coach to identify that, number one. Number two, there was no joy in what you do. And so therefore when you're going to work out, it brings that you carry the weight of the negativity or the difficulty or the unmet expectation if she hasn't had the opportunity to train. And we might not have the greatest training, but we have an opportunity today, and when she does her race, that's a great opportunity to see how tough can I be despite however fit or unfit I might be. But this is a window into my soul. How tough can I be today? And that's really all we're doing with these things. If you're super fit, first or last, how tough can you be on the day, and try and make yourself proud and find joy in what you do? And I think that's the most important thing that we sometimes forget when we're cranking out intervals or miles or counting all those things,
I love that answer. I love both those answers. I think that's fantastic. And she did actually message me a minute ago, and she's really upset she's not in this interview because she really wanted to meet. She certainly wanted to meet somebody that won 2 100-mile races. She's in
next year when she's crewing, Jill, she'll have a great opportunity to meet her in person.
Yeah.
There's an open invitation to help carry some water or that type of thing.
So what how old are your kids, and what do they think of what mum and dad get up to? And do they have ambitions to follow along, or do they have their own dreams and ambitions?
Our kids are 12 and 9. They're both
Awesome.
boys right now. And the thing that I learned, and that we've learned, I think, into introducing them to this lifestyle, is that when you introduce young children into aerobic or endurance sport or any sport, that they are at a level far, 15 minutes is a big workout for young kids sometimes.
Yeah.
And I had to remember that. We're a mountain bike ride and we're out here for 10 minutes, and when they're 5 or 6 years old and we want to go, and they're tired, that's a great ride for them. And when I started to realize that and listen to them and give them a little bit more grace, they started to want to do it a lot more. And I think we've seen the results of that, them continuing to ask, Mom, can I go for a bike ride? Or can we go mountain biking? Can you take us up to the bluff? That type of thing. So
I will say, like, that's a whole nother podcast and talking about youth sports, but I think we've given them plenty of opportunity where we just introduce them to various things, right? And we see what takes hold, what they become passionate about, what excites them, what they have fun doing. Sometimes we still do family hikes, and sometimes they're like, we don't want to go for a hike. But then there's the balance too of doing the things where they like to do. Like we go out and kick the soccer ball around, even when maybe Eric and I wouldn't want to kick the soccer ball around, but it's fun to them. So a balance, and then it ends up being fun for us too. Fun. So balancing that, and then just following them to some degree, seeing what lights their world on fire. And when it comes to like running, I really don't push either one of the boys to run, because I think running, I think if they find that later, that's awesome. But right now is an opportunity to be part of a lot of different team sports and just having a lot of experiences.
They tried swimming. We tried the swim team for a year, and I think they're very good swimmers. I think they're built for it. They did a very nice job when they were there, and they said, well, we'd like to do basketball or another sport, and trusting them to make their own decisions and drive their own path we support that. I still think they could be great swimmers and cross country runners. And if they choose that, good for them. And if not, no problem.
And as far as what they think about mom and dad, I think they think that this is just what mom and dad do. This is who they are.
And so they probably think young children, they just buy into it. Whatever it is, they buy into it, as long as there's love and support and encouragement.
Right. And hopefully we're positive role models in that respect. We took a bike trip to Bentonville, Arkansas, which touts itself as the biking capital of the United States. There's, I think, over 200 miles of mountain bike trails. And they do a really nice job there. Shout out to Bentonville, where they have beginner trails right next to intermediate trails and expert trails. So all of us could ride together, and they could see the possibility of where they could go. And they've latched on and loved that. So it's pretty cool. They're, as we talked before the podcast, they're in the room next door watching the tour. One of them is in the room next door watching the time trial in the Tour de France, which we will not say who wins.
Yeah, no spoilers. Yeah,
exactly. So they've kind of got the bug. It's cool seeing that.
Awesome. Jill, I wanted to ask before we get into a few final questions, I wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on what Courtney Dauwalter has pulled off this year, setting the course record at Western States and the Hard Rock 100 in the same year by a considerable margin?
You know, when you ask that, I'm almost like tearing up.
I know.
I didn't expect to tear up, but like, wow, like that's so incredible. Like they ask people those questions of like, who do you idolize as an athlete? And I would probably never say anybody, because my brain doesn't work like that. I like to pick and choose different things that I can learn from different people. But I mean, she's from the Midwest where we live, she's from Minnesota. I wish I could go for a run with her, because man, I'd really like to ask her. I mean, she talks a lot about the pain cave, right? And Courtney says I've listened to anything that she puts out. She doesn't say that she chases course records, But let's be honest, she's definitely aware of what the course record time is. But I think it comes back to what I was saying before. I don't think she sets those time limits for herself because, one, she knows that it's going to get grueling out there. So you can't have those kind of limits because sometimes it does just mean a finish. And when she says she wants to get a finish, I think she genuinely means that. She's not just saying it like a cliche thing. And then also, I don't think she sets the time limits because she doesn't limit herself. So the pain cave and like Merrick, like, I want to know, how do you do that? Like, what do you do? Because you know it hurts. Like, how does she do that? How does she keep going, finding more despite being out there and just pushing the limits the way that she is? So what she is doing is absolutely, it's phenomenal. It's mind-blowing, phenomenal.
Bonkers.
It's beautiful, inspirational.
It is all of those things, isn't it? It's just every time I get a bit more news about what she's done, I am blown away by the difference that she's making to that sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for females. And I mean, and then she has Kevin supporting her like I have Eric supporting me.
So what's next for both of you? What events have you got lined up? Where are you going next? What do you want to achieve next? What do you want to see each other achieve next?
Well, family-wise, we're on Sunday. One of my past swimmers, who is a really good biker as well, we're going to Cuyuna, which is another mountain bike hub in Minneapolis or in Minnesota. So our families are going there to mountain bike. And then at the end of that week, you have...
I'm going to run that 50-mile race. I'm going to see how tough I can be.
and
then
a couple more races coming up, right?
Then in the fall, I'm going to be doing Hennepin 100 in the desert.
Nice.
And for me, I have in September, I have the Schwamagon. It's a 40-mile mountain bike race, which for me is going to be short. I'm trying to get my speed up to be short and quick, and that's a short race for me. So it should be exciting for that.
And what sort of conditions will that be in?
Mostly single track.
Okay.
And then some fire roads in between. So not a real technical race. This is the first time I'm doing it. It's part of the Lifetime Fitness scenario. So it should be it's a pretty aggressive, fast race. And I think they have 2,000 riders, something like that go there as well. So part of the pro tour portion.
Okay. And you'll race in the desert, Jill? Will that be, what sort of conditions will you find out there?
It can be fairly hot.
Yeah, I thought it might be.
And the course it's five loops, and so fairly flat, but some elevation to it, and it will be some tough competition because it's a Western States qualifying race.
Well, good luck with that. Hey, you've got to let us know how that goes. Maybe you could come back on and tell us how that went once you've finished.
Well, I'd be honored. Thank you for having us. And
very much.
We're honored that you would find value in sharing our story.
Without question. But we have reached the most important part of the podcast now, which is when we ask you both for a song that you train to or race to add to the playlist on Spotify. So if you could, in turn, give us one of your favorite training or racing tracks, I'd appreciate it.
Is it, Eric, is it Judah and the Lion?
Yeah.
Spirits?
Oh.
Is that the song that I like?
Well, you like Home as well.
Oh, well, I love Home.
Blue October.
We'll do that one. Home by Blue October.
Home by Blue October. I've never heard that track before. I'll be intrigued to see what that sounds like.
You need to listen to it, and then you need to tell me if you get through it without crying.
I don't get through much without crying, to be honest, at the moment. Walking to the kitchen is enough right now. But
it is like, it brings in family and how we don't know what's around the corner and the value of being together, right?
Mm-hmm. And for me, I think Rush Hemisphere, the group Rush, Canadian rock band Rush, the Hemispheres, circumstances, which will probably be of interest to less than 1% of your listeners, but the Rush fans are true and loyal. And
yeah. I know that's a very loyal following that band has got.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
You should check out our playlist. It's becoming very, very varied.
Oh, I will definitely check it out. I love that stuff. We both have playlists, as every athlete probably has, made playlists for their own hype playlists.
Yeah, what I love about the Get Out in It playlist is that every song that comes on, I have the song itself, but I also remember who put it on there from our journey through the podcast, and it adds an extra dynamic for us.
Oh, that would be fun to listen to while you're out running and thinking of the different people and the
absolutely, and all the stories they tell us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on, both of you. It's been an absolute pleasure talking through what you're up to, what you have been up to, and what you're up to next. It's a joy to hear it, to be honest, and we're both very impressed by what you've both achieved. Jill, keep on winning those races. Go and smash that desert to bits, and take that course record next year when you go back to the other race.
Yeah, for sure.
I will if Maria's there.
All right, she'll be there. She's gonna come and crew for you. My word on it.
Thank you for having us. We very much appreciate it. And you asked some great questions. It was fun to be part of.
Hey, and let us know how Maria's 80K goes.
I will indeed. I'll make sure I send some photos as it goes on. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
The debrief.
The emphasis was correct, I feel.
Okay.
So that was epic. What did you think of Jill and Eric Wojta?
Oh my God, what an amazing couple, huh? What adventures they and their family gets up to. I'm going to say it. I'm in awe of her, actually. I think she's an extraordinary woman who's achieved some extraordinary things. And I kind of want to be her.
So are you going to take her up on her offer of crewing for a big, long race in America next year?
Fuck yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds like an adventure, doesn't it? Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to them. It was the time flew by, and I feel like we only really scratched the surface of various topics that we went across. I think the fact that she's only done 2 100-mile races in her career so far, and she's won both of them, setting a course record on one, shows that she's got a real aptitude for that kind of racing. She entered her first ultramarathon, which was 50 kilometers, I think, 56 maybe, and came second in that. And she's got a really healthy and interesting attitude to training and what training brings, and their relationship, and how that level of support that's there and respect that's there is something that we can all sort of, take something from. And I was just fascinated throughout, to be honest.
I mean, I'm a little bit jealous because her first 50-odd K ultra that she did, she came second. I think my first one, I came fourth from last. I limped across that finish line. Completely different people. But yeah, what a lovely couple. And I love the fact that they get their kids involved in like these family adventures and everything. I think that's marvelous.
And the honesty, I enjoyed the honesty when I asked the question for you about how to deal with setbacks, how to deal with the fact that, something's gone wrong. And her honesty is, well, I have a massive tantrum first, and then I lean on Eric, and he comes and helps me sort it out, and then eventually I'll get there in my own mind. Because it's very easy to ask a question like that of somebody who is who are doing these challenges to a high level, and to hear this kind of thing, actually, you just got to be able to process it really easy. The generic sort of answer, but a little bit of honesty in there about how, sometimes you are going to feel particularly put out, and you are going to feel like things aren't going your way. It's okay to feel like that, as long as you've got a strategy in place and people around you to help you get through that and move past it and find a way to process it.
I'm glad there are other adults out there who have tantrums.
Yes, it is. It's good to know. It's good to know. Is it not? So shall we go and have a coffee and forget all about it? Not forget all about it. What are we going to do? Have a coffee and talk about it. Yeah, let's do that.
Oh, coffee. The weekly roast. Is that it? So Sicily and coffee are quite a thing.
Synonymous.
Apparently, yeah. Apparently, there's a big old tradition of coffee over here in Sicilia. So on our travels, we found a little town called Enna, which I think that's how it's pronounced, E-N-N-A, Enna. And there's a cafe in Enna called Kili, which I forced you to go in and have a coffee with me because obviously Kili is the name of one of the dwarfs from The Hobbit. And that's the most solid reason for entering a cafe, like literally in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So we found this little quaint little cafe in Sicily, and obviously it's boiling hot. So I had a coffee and a gelato. It's called a gelato, isn't it? Not a gelato.
It's granita.
I had a coffee and a granita, a lemon granita. It was particularly nice. The coffee was astounding. And so anybody who's visiting Sicily, I would recommend you go and check this place out. But there are many, many and varied cafes throughout the country, and coffee is something they take very seriously over here, and it is very tasty.
Yeah, to be honest, I think the next few weekly roasts are going to be Sicilian-based coffees because I'm going to buy fuck tons of this stuff to bring back to France with me. And also, like they do have like vegetable milks over here. Vegetable milks, that sounds weird. Like oat milk and shit like that, soya milk. But it's not like mainland Sicily where you can walk into a cafe and say, oh yeah, can I have this cappuccino, but put in non-abused animal milk for me, will ya? I've been drinking a lot of black coffee and it's eye-opening, bowel-opening. But it is nice with the granita. This combo that we've discovered of coffee and granita, I'm quite digging it.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's, as I said earlier in the podcast, we're both feeling a little bit fatigued today due to a very late night last night, getting back in about 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And so we haven't really done much. It's now getting later in the afternoon. The sun is beginning to sink, so I can feel a coffee and a granita coming into my life as the day advances through, because I think I need to get out the room for a little bit.
Yeah, so it's like it was one of those things where you think, am I going on a long run tomorrow? Fuck, it's 4 o'clock in the morning and I'm just getting into bed. But yeah, I'm definitely up for coffee and granita a little bit later on.
So, shall we be honest?
Let's be honest.
I know you've got. I haven't got much to say. Let's be honest. So I'll just get mine out of the way quick. I mean, it hasn't been much of a struggle because I'm rehabbing, because I'm feeling improvements. I'm just going through the motions. Every now and again, it feels a bit worse. Every now and again, it feels a bit better. But I'm not having any massive emotional spikes or pits. I'm just doing the work and getting through it. So that's my. Let's be honest. I miss hard running, but it will come. So if I'm honest, it's over to you, Maria Herring, because you've got a lot to say, eh?
I've always got a lot to say. I'm always rambling on about nonsense. Let's be honest, I had, before my fortnight of camps, I had my epiphany of, don't think about this next 2 weeks as not training, think about it as cross-training, which was great. And so I went into these sports camps feeling a little less stressed about my non-regularly scheduled training things. Turns out, easier said than done. Because even though I was out and about a lot, and even though there was activities, like really random and varied activities every single day, turns out when you're also making sure that a bunch of kids don't die, you can't really put all your effort into that activity. So it wasn't really cross-training for me, I didn't feel. Like I was out and about, I was doing stuff, I was getting out in it every single day, but not to the training level that I kind of wanted. And so as the fortnight progressed, I was getting, in my mind was getting more and more tightly wound as to the fact that I wasn't doing any training, and it was like, oh my God. I had to talk myself down a couple of times. I mean, I had fun. It was really, really good fun. And it wasn't anywhere near as hot as Sicily, which I appreciate now, even though we were kind of going into a heat wave. Because, like, what is it here? It's like 42 degrees Celsius. It's fucking mental. Whereas where I was in France, it was only like, fucking hell, it was so warm. It was so cool. It was like 29, 30 maybe 31. Like, it was nothing. Anyway, so yeah, I found that it as that fortnight progressed, it became more and more of a struggle to convince myself that this was a cross-training fortnight. Because the other thing that was happening was the amount of food I was eating, which was also kind of stressing me out a little bit. Because, I mean, I eat a lot, and I'm not one of those people who gets wound up about the kind of food or the amount of food that they do or don't eat. But even though my training had reduced significantly, my appetite hadn't. So I found I was eating a fuck ton of food, but not doing all of the movement to kind of combat that. And that was also kind of playing into my my weird mind thing over the fortnight. So yeah, it turned out to be a little bit weirder than I thought it was going to be, James Bale. What was going on with my brain hole?
I mean, I think two things had happened. You told yourself that it was going to be, you'd let yourself off the hook for not training by telling yourself that it was going to be, the activities you were doing were going to be strenuous and they were going to replace training to a point. And what had actually happened when you got there was you hadn't taken into account that it wasn't going to be a replacement for training. You weren't going to get the same sensations you do for training. What you are doing is you're on your feet all day, every day. You're thinking all day, every day. You're stressed because you're looking after younger children. You are constantly being active. You're trying new things. You are stressing yourself in very different ways, but you're not getting that return feeling that you get from training, which is your endorphins, the fatigued feeling and then the recovery. What you're getting is a heightened level of stress response throughout the day on a consistent basis, which isn't enough to make you feel knackered or at any point or feel that return of endorphins, but is enough to put you to the point where you feel really tired all the time and you haven't got the energy to do anything additional or anything else. Now, what you've got to do in these situations is be kind to yourself and think, you know what? This is 2 weeks out of life where I'm not doing everything I would normally be doing, but I am constantly moving. And yeah, your Garmin watch might not say you're burning many calories, or whatever it does or doesn't say. But the Garmin is a very decontextualized instrument. It's a tiny little robot that doesn't know you, doesn't know your life, doesn't know what you're doing, doesn't know what the demands are on you at that moment. So, I would be surprised if any of this 2 weeks that you had away was to the detriment of your training or your fitness, because you were on it, you were moving, you were doing lots of different things. The problem is you told yourself that the activities you were doing were going to be replacement for your training, and when they're clearly not replacing that training, that had a detrimental effect on your mental health. But it's about creating systems and processes in your mind that will allow you to say, it's all right. It's all right. I haven't lost any fitness, and I can pick up where I left off in the burning heat of Sicily.
Because that's the other thing, right? When I was having this weird kind of mind flip, and I was like, oh, no, I'm not doing all my training. And even this cross training, it's not working out. I kept saying to myself, it's okay. You're going to be in Sicily next week on holiday. You can do a fuck ton of running. And I was like, it's okay. You can get right back into running as soon as you get to Sicily. As soon as we got to Sicily and it was fucking balls hot, I was like, mate, how am I supposed to run in this heat? So yeah, it was when we arrived, I was like, it's fucked. It is now going to be 3 weeks of not training, and that's it. I'm totally fucked.
Yeah, well, I think this harks back to something I talked about with Jill in the interview, which was, what do you do when life gives you lemons? Sometimes you just got to think that is life. Now, not only did you have 2 weeks off, but our travel to Sicily was disrupted to a level that I was having trouble comprehending. We ended up in the wrong airport, miles from where we needed to be, on a bus that was taking us to an entirely different place that we also didn't need to be. We had to make up a story. I had to find a woman on the bus who spoke perfect English and Sicilian. I then had to tell her that I was going to my best friend's wedding. I was the best man and I was late, and that I had the rings. She told the bus driver that story, and the bus driver then agreed reluctantly to pull over by the side of the road and let me off at a certain point so that we could be collected and taken to where we needed to be. It has been an ordeal, and I needed a lot of sleep today to get over the last few days. So, as Jill said when we were chatting to her, sometimes life gives you lemons. That is life. And we are not pro athletes. You know, it's not life or death whether we do our training. The training is there to supplement a healthy and active lifestyle. But life exists around that, and sometimes you just gotta roll with the punches, motherfucker.
Yeah, right, but you're not the one who's doing an 80k ultra in a couple of months. I'm supposed to be in training for that nonsense. So it's kind of playing on my mind a little bit. I know I'm not pro, and I know running is for life. It's not just for Christmas. And I know it's only 3 weeks out of my entire life, but it's really funny how like it's easy to get quite obsessed with that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I'm not training for an 80k ultra, so ultimately from this point on, once this little foray into Sicily is over, you're just going to we'll put a program in place and you'll do the work. What you shouldn't ever do is get caught up in what you have or haven't done. Get caught up in what you are or are not going to do from the point at which you are.
Yeah, okay, all right. But I mean, we've been in Sicily a couple of days. Obviously, we haven't acclimatized because this is ridiculous heat. No one should live here. It's mental. Although, you know, you talked about lemons. Sicilian lemons, quite nice. Dig in the lemon granita. And the fucking lemon jam. Lemon jam for breakfast. Yeah.
I don't know whether anybody can hear, but I drank more wine than I have for a long time yesterday at this event. So, you know, I'm feeling dehydrated. I feel it's a difficult day today, but there's a podcast to do and we're getting it out. So what we're going to do now is go away and put some music on and forget all about it, shall we?
I feel fine. I didn't drink anywhere near as much as you. But yes, let's go away and forget all about it. Turn it up.
That'll probably do, won't it?
So this week I've got a song that I'm going to put on there, which I quite like. It's got a really slow build-up. And then when the beat kicks in and the lyrics are fantastic, it's called Shortchange Hero by The Heavy, and it's from 2009's The House That Dirt Built. It's a very cool song, and it's not really one that I would use for running per se. Maybe a really long, slow run on a playlist, but it's not one that's going to pump me up for them intervals. But it's certainly a good track if you're at home lifting some weights or something like that, because it's got a good length to it, and I really do like the lyricist.
Well, that sounds very interesting. I've also picked one because I've missed my long runs. Missed as in, oh, I miss you long runs. That kind of miss, not as in, oh shit, I didn't do it this week kind of thing. Not that kind of miss. Anyway, because I've missed doing my long runs, I picked a song in honor of that, but also in honor of the Kili Caffe that we went to. So my track is from the 2012 The Hobbit soundtrack. And I picked because this is actually quite a nice album to do a long run to. But I picked the Song of the Lonely Mountain, which is the end credit song by Neil Flynn that sees out the film, because it's fucking awesome. So there you go. Little bit of continuity twixt coffee and music.
Yeah, it's a good track, and it's The Hobbit isn't my favourite series of films. I think they brutalised it. I didn't think they did very well. I think they spread what should have been 1, maybe 2 films over 3.
Right.
And also, I didn't like the filming style. It was too shiny, and it didn't look as real or as organic as the Lord of the Rings trilogy is. But I mean, the Lord of the Rings trilogy is probably one of my favourite 3 film series ever. So
it is. The Lord of the Rings is the absolute bollocks, but you can just get right to fuck with your comment about The Hobbit.
Well, it's just not as good, is it? By a long way. By a fucking long way. Anyway, that's probably it from us, isn't it?
Yeah, I reckon.
You do reckon. So if you'd like to find out more, head to www.getoutinit.events. There's loads of info on there, and you can sign up for the newsletter, download the Personal Development Friend, and book a free consultation with us to discuss your health and fitness journey and the roadmap we would like to help you build to get there. If you like the podcast, please head over to your podcatcher of choice and leave a review. If you do it on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, it's even better. We'd really appreciate it. Say whatever you like, but leave 5 stars.
Please leave a review. It would be super, super kind.
Indeed. Well, it's been a pleasure, and I'll see you again.
See you soon. Bye.
Cheerio.
Thanks for hitting the trails with us this week. We'll meet you back here next Monday for more news, more views, more nature.
All the links for our socials are in the show notes. Find and follow us on Facebook, Insta, YouTube and Twitter. You can subscribe to our newsletter from our website for all the latest updates and camp plans. You get a fun free gift when you sign up.
Leave a review on your podcast app. It's really easy and really helps us out.
And if you've got any friends who could do with getting out in it, then bring them along to next week's outdoor adventure. We'd love to have you all with us.
Catch you next week. Cheerio.